Welcome back, everybody. As you can see, I have been in the queue for Trial of the Hordes for nearly 20 minutes at this point, and there's actually been a couple of hotfixes that have gone into the game. In fact, there's been more than a couple, to tell you the truth, but there's been 2 hotfixes for the event Trial of the Hordes, as well as 2 hotfixes for Battlegrounds. I don't believe these are published anywhere, so I just wanted to share these and help pass the info along, or perhaps they are published and you haven't seen it. Either way, let me go ahead and share them for you. So for Trial of the Hordes, you now only get 1 potion charge. So you'll have 1. It no longer refills while you're in there. In fact, I get a match around 20 minutes. So I'm going to get to go ahead and do a match here. On top of only having that 1 potion charge, the queue timer will now go up to 2 hours, meaning that you can wait in that queue for almost 2 hours before it will pop, or 2 hours exactly, and then it will actually drop you out of it. If you cancel before that, though, it prompts a message saying that you will receive a penalty if you continually cancel. So this is also a problem, and nothing was done to alleviate that. A lot of players, when they finally get a matchup, the individuals on the other side choose to cancel because they can see the opponent that they're facing. And I don't blame anybody for not wanting to face me. I'm a very high resonance player, and seeing me is probably a waste of your time if you know that you don't have a chance of competing, right? You may as well cancel and look for another match. However, it just wastes the time of the other player, and vice versa. It's a waste of their time to go into that match. So we really need a better solution than that, in my opinion. And the last thing that we see is that there are far less matches ending in a draw. In fact, I'm not sure they can even end in a draw, to be honest, because the final change is that if both players kill all of the enemies, the player that kills the enemies first will actually win the match. So when you get down to those final few seconds, if both players are keeping up, the player who has defeated all of the enemies first will actually go ahead and be victorious. So a few changes there. And for the Battleground, we've actually seen 2 hotfixes, both of which deal with the lag and the rubber banding that has been occurring. And I love to see this. This is probably the fastest reaction time we've had for Battlegrounds in regard to lag and rubber banding and so forth. I'm pretty sure at this point, every single major update we've had has introduced additional lag or just problems into the Battleground and so forth. So that's nothing new. However, it's nice to see that it's being attended to early. Now, it's still not perfect. In fact, you'll still experience some lag. Seems to be kind of evolving or revolving around the Starfire shard and the knockback effect from it. So not going to be perfect, but it's absolutely better. And I love to see that from the devs. There was a lot of concern that, oh, this game was going to be abandoned. This game didn't get attention before D4. Well, in fact, we're seeing some pretty quick reaction time, as well as seeing some hotfixes for this mode, which, like I said, is a limited time event. And I didn't expect anything for this personally. In fact, I assumed we just wouldn't get anything until it came around again for the second time, if that. So happy to see that, and we'll see where things kind of go. Hopefully I'm able to pull out a victory here. And it looks like, in this case, I actually win the tiebreaker from killing more of the monsters. So we see some of this change going into effect here, and see that that's essentially what people were asking for. There was a lot of complaints about so many matches ending in draw, tons of complaints about the healing potions and so forth. So what am I using for a build? Well, I'm happy to share this build. This is different than my original build, and what I like most about this build is that I think it's a lot more accessible to more of the wizard players out there, or perhaps even some of the necro players that might want to swap over and utilize some int gear. This build was shared to me by GilgameshX, so I just want to give it thanks for passing the build along and helping everybody out for something that may be more accessible. The reason for that is we still use 2-piece Vithus. However, in addition to that, what we're going to use is 4-piece Grace rather than 4-piece Gloomguide. Many wizards weren't saving Gloomguide pieces or weren't going after them to farm them and so forth, so that's set in that build that I showed wasn't kind of everybody's first choice. Well, this build uses the Grace here, and a lot more wizards are going to have access to that. So we're using Teleport, Lightning Nova, Arcane Torrent, Ice Armor, and Electrocute. Now, there are some options. You can swap the primary attack and change a couple essences out, but we'll cover the ones for Electrocute here. And what we're going to use for essences, first off, we're going to use Crushing Weight. This allows our teleport to add additional damage to us after we use it. So previously with the Gloom, we wanted to teleport whenever possible, right? Because that was our dash. That would give us 10% damage from this. It would give us critical hit chance from Gloom. It would give us a damage buff from Gloom. Well, in this situation, since we're utilizing Grace, we actually kind of reserve the teleport and only use it when necessary. But when we do teleport, we're going to get some additional damage, which is just an added benefit. In addition to that, we have the Perfect Situation, which kind of helps us in dungeons just to kind of keep up with the pack mobility-wise. Additional move speed after we use teleport. And it's important to note that we do not have either of the essences for Lightning Nova that increase speed. So due to that reason, you can have difficulty keeping up. So the combination of teleport and the shoulder essence here really helped out a lot. For the chest piece, we're using Nor the Hail Cursed, and this is really good for raids. Not so needed in dungeons, depending on your combat rating perhaps, but in raids this is really nice. It's just going to reduce the damage you take while ice armor is active and just allow you to kind of have more uptime, less time worrying about your own health, and just doing more damage overall. For the pants, we're using Novel Castigation, and this is just going to allow Arcane Torrent to do additional damage. I've covered this in pretty much every build so far for wizards this go around, including Rift Carver, right? These two are just staples of the wizard builds right now because you're going to use Arcane Torrent in a non-channeled form for base. So you're going to want that pair. The offhand here is Charged Stigma, and this is one of the ones that you'll choose if you're running Electrocute, and that's because it's going to increase your primary attack speed, which actually stacks. So we're using Weaver Paragon Tree, so we're going to throw out some skills, and we're going to throw out some primary attacks. You will basically always be at 15 stacks of Weaver, so make sure that you have this one in there. This is going to really increase your damage. In addition to that, we also have Old Rustic, and this is going to cause Lightning Nova to increase our primary attack speed. So we aren't using any essences to buff the Lightning Nova itself, unless you happen to have the Essence Mastery and an Awakened piece, right? I shouldn't even say Essence Mastery, I should say just the Awakened piece, excuse me here. But we're not buffing the Nova itself. What we're doing is using the Nova to buff our attack speed, and the combination of Old Rustic and Charged Stigma together are really going to dramatically increase our attack speed and allow us to do much more damage while the skills are on cooldown, right? We're going to hit Arcane Torrent and just let it basically run its duration. We're going to hit Ice Armor and let it run its duration. We're going to hit Lightning Nova, it's going to go out, and we're going to let it return. So we're basically hitting our abilities and then auto-attacking. If that makes sense, we're not sitting there channeling. We're not sitting there with rapid-fire cooldowns. We're just kind of hitting buttons and then moving on to the auto-attacks. Finally, Heart of the Storm, and this is going to change Ice Armor into Storm Armor, and I can't say this enough. In fact, I want to show it because I still see people asking about the other essence, and I'm still getting messages and so forth about it. So I'm just going to teleport over here, and I'm going to show you the tooltip for my character, and this is going to vary depending on your character and so forth. But this tooltip for Storm Armor says for my character, I'm going to do about 30,000 damage here, okay? Well, I'm going to go ahead, now I'm going to walk into a pack and let all of my buffs, gems, and so forth proc. So don't mind this damage here. I'm just trying to use things like Worthy and so forth. At this point, all right, with everything used up and on cooldown, I'm going to hit Storm Armor, and look how much damage that's doing. Okay, some of these ticks are hitting for almost 80k, so it does more than twice the damage on occasion of what it actually indicates. On top of that, it can proc your Grace and so forth. So this ability is absolutely underrated, probably the biggest sleeper just because the tooltip is so inaccurate. So what do you do after you hit Q for Trial of the Hordes? Well, that's up to you, but your options are somewhat limited. You can open world farm, you can fish, you could do bounties solo, but you can't join a group, you can't run dungeons in a group, you can't queue for a battleground. You're really limited. You can't do rifts for Crest group or anything like that. I'm not sure if you can run them solo, to tell you the truth. I have to try that, but there's a lot of things that you can't do when you're in this queue. So even by being increased to allow you to be there for 2 hours, well, you can't even really get up, right? Because if you're playing during the day, if you're world farming, you can just get up. If you die, you can just resurrect in town, go back to where you were, and continue. But if you miss your queue for Trial of the Hordes after 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, well, you won't join the match, but you'll incur a penalty if you do that enough times, and then you have to go back into the queue. To be honest, I'm just into gold at this point, and I'm not sure I'll even hit legend before this event is over, and I think there's another 11 days. The reason is the queues are just too long. I got that match after 20 minutes, and that's pretty quick for me. So there's going to need to be some additional changes here. Otherwise, some of these rewards are just unattainable for players, even if they're capable of winning the matches. It's just a strictly an issue of time here. So as always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and have a great day.